Hello and welcome to the show. We start today with the Lexus LFA. This is a car that, I'll be honest, I don't really ever think about using in Forza 5. If I was to build a car for a certain class of racing, let's say A-Class or S-Class, I would normally pick maybe an ACR Viper, a 360 Challenge, or modify something up from the lower classes, an MX-5 or a Honda NSX, something along those lines. So I've never driven the Lexus LFA, but I wanted to give it a go to see what it was actually like to drive. Now, the first thing that I noticed about this car is the weight. I'm sure you've all heard the various stories of how they spent many years designing this car and decided they wanted it to be lighter, so they scratched it all and started again. Well, the Lexus weighs 3,200 pounds, there or thereabouts, which is okay, not massively heavy, but it's not exactly the ultra lightweight car that I expected when you consider this weighs near enough the same as the 2013 Viper, Ferrari 458 Italia. It's 200 pounds heavier than a McLaren MP4. It's fairly light, but it's not this hugely lightweight thing. It's heavier than I expected it to be, if I'm honest. It's also a car that I can never quite decide if I like the look of it. From some angles, such as this one, I think it's a quite good looking car. But then from others it looks a bit strange and slightly out of proportion. Sometimes it doesn't even look like a supercar at all. It's a funny one. It's very strange. I'm sure it's all very cleverly designed in a wind tunnel to give you maximum aerodynamical stuff. But I'm not sure I quite like it. I don't know. It's very hard. It's a weird one. It's a very hard one to decide if I like it or not. From that angle, it looks a bit strange. I don't know. It's a little bit of an odd car. The first thing, though, you will notice about this vehicle, without any shadow of a doubt, is the engine. It is quite a fantastic engine they have in the Lexus. It is an absolutely howling V10. Again, I'm sure you've heard the stories of the speedo. They have to use a digital speedo in this car because it picks up and loses revs so fast an analog one simply can't keep up. It does sound absolutely fantastic, especially through the walls here at Bathurst. It is without a doubt one of the best engines there is. It's such a very unique sound, unique to the LFA. I'm trying to think of a car that kind of matches it. Maybe some of the Lamborghini V12s make a similar kind of sound. There's just nothing really that sounds like this. It gives it a very unique feature that I do quite like about the LFA, and the character of the engine kind of carries over to the handling of this car. The engine is all very immediate, very, very fast revving, and the handling is also a similar thing. It's all very immediate, all very precise with this car. I think the best way to describe the LFA is lively. It's a very, very lively car. I don't mean that in the twitchy way. It can at times be a little bit twitchy. It's not bad. It's not particularly bad by supercar standards. But everything happens all at once. It wants to use all of its power all of the time. It wants to rev incredibly quickly. And that's a good thing. It gives the car a lot of character in many respects. Of course, acceleration, top speed, all very, very supercar-esque. High-speed grip is pretty good as we come through the chase, about 180, 175 miles an hour in this car. It's a good handling car. The brakes are also very good. I did like the brakes on this one. Get stopped very quickly. Downsides to this, there aren't too many on the handling front anyway. The back end is a little bit more slidey than I would ideally like, but I know I'm quite picky on that. Me personally, I like a car that's very, very planted, that won't slide around, no matter how much of an idiot you are, and this will. It's a powerful supercar, but yeah, it will slide around under excessive throttle use. It's certainly controllable if you're a bit careful. I think it suits the character of the car, though. This lively, exciting car should slide around, shouldn't be understeering at all. But yeah, at times it's just a little bit too much for my personal liking. Of course, the other downside with the LFA, and we can't really escape this fact, is it is a hell of a lot of money. 380,000 credits. That's very, very expensive. You could have a Nissan GTR and ACR Viper, both of which are quicker than the LFA, and a Lamborghini Diablo, and still have 50,000 credits left over to spend on something else. It's an awful lot of money. While it does have a certain character, this car, with the incredible engine and handling, it's very expensive, and being a supercar, it has plenty of rivals This is one of them, the Mercedes SLR. Again, this is another car that I've never driven on Forza 5 until I came to film this, so I thought it'd be interesting to see what it's like. Now, this is a very, very different beast to the Lexus. If we were to compare these to birds of prey, I would say the LFA is very much a falcon. It's all very quick, all very, very immediate, fast, change of directions, etc. Whereas the SLR is more of an eagle, big, powerful brute of a thing that perhaps not as quick as the Falcon, but, you know, you still wouldn't want to get into a fight with one. The McLaren is a very, very different car, but both of these are very, very quick. They get their speeds in completely different ways. On paper, the McLaren should be the faster of the two, power-wise, more power in the SLR, 617 horsepower, to the Lexus's 552. There are over 200 more torques though from the SLR. So 0 to 60 is 3.5 for the Merc, 3.6 for the LFA. 0 to 100 again quicker in the Mercedes, 7.5 to the LFA, 7.8. Top speed, yet again, quicker for the Merc with 215 miles an hour. It's actually pretty damn fast for any supercar, but is quicker than the LFA. The LFA manages around 200. Yeah, it is technically the quicker car. Surprising, actually, considering this is quite a lot heavier, 3,800 pounds. Not quite the Golf in weight that I expected, but still, it does mighty well for such a heavy car. On the handling front, it's a little unfair to call this car sluggish, but when you swap between, when you go from driving the LFA to driving this, that's the easiest way to explain it. There is not the same immediate response to everything that you do with the car. However, the flip side of that is at times it can be a little bit more stable through some of the corners. It's something that I find quite a bit in Forza 5. The heavier cars tend to be sort of less twitchy, more stable on the power, more stable through the high-speed corners. And you do get that to an extent with the SLR, but the Lexus does do a remarkably good job of keeping everything under control. The other thing I find with this car is there's almost the surprise of the speed that you're doing in it. You'll be going along, you'll suddenly look down at the speedo, realise you're doing 150 at a bit that you probably shouldn't be and that you've just missed your braking board. It's surprisingly quick, this car. It really does catch you out. There are the occasional brown trouser moments with it, as I got a little bit close to the wall. I didn't quite realise how close I got until I watched back that replay. That was very, very close. Ideally, I don't want to do that again. You can get yourself into trouble with the SLR. It is very powerful, very torquey, and quite heavy. The brakes are not quite as sharp as the LFA's either. I would like it to stop a little bit quicker, but again, that's not particularly surprising considering the weight. This is also another car that I'm not quite sure. I like the look of the SLR until you get to the weird nose thing that it has going on. That bit, the rest of it looks great. That bit that's not going to show it, you can kind of, I don't know why it's got a hooked nose. It's a little bit odd. Otherwise, I do quite like it. Yeah, the SLR, it gets its speed in a very different way to the LFA. More about the straight line section. Not quite as good through the corners, but still very, very capable around a track. It's, yeah, it's an interesting one. And on the subject of price, the Mercedes is quite expensive as well. 330,000 credits. Still 50,000 less than the Lexus, though. Anyway, it is time to hand both of these cars over to our tame racing driver to see which one is faster around the Top Gear test track. Now, on paper, the Mercedes should be the quicker off the line, but I think when it comes to actually driving these cars, there's more wheel spin in the Mercedes. The Lexus can put its power down a little bit better, so as they come up towards the first corner, both of them are very, very close. Together, the LFA is just a little bit quicker through the corners, but the minute we get to the straight line, the power and the torque of the Mercedes means that it can catch up and it can kind of negate that difference. Again, out of Chicago, both are still very, very close together. We've now got a bit of a straight. The Mercedes can pull away slightly from the Lexus, but on the braking, the Lexus is later on the brakes and then come up towards one of the trickier corners on the track at Hammerhead. The Lexus is just a little bit better here. Both cars struggle a little bit on the power front. Out of the Hammerhead, you can see them bobbing around as our driver tries to get them under control. It's a tricky corner, that one there. Driven it a few times myself. It's very, very bumpy, and in supercars like these, can be a little bit tricky. Both cars very, very fast past the tyre wall, about 120 miles an hour, as they both keep on the track up towards the second to last corner, and still they are incredibly close. Every time the Lexus pulls away a little bit through the corners, the Mercedes brings it back on the straights, and as they round the final corner, it's a run to the line, and it's very close. It's incredibly close between the pair of them, but the fastest lap goes to the LFA with a 118.6. The SLR is 0.08 of a second behind it. That is remarkably close between the pair of them. Before I started this, I expected the LFA to be to be noticeably quicker than the SLR. It just isn't. It really isn't. The other interesting thing here, the Corvette C7 Stingray costs 65,000 credits, I think it is. It is only a second slower than the LFA. You can have a fleet of Stingrays for the price of the LFA. It's only a second slower around the track than the Lexus. That's quite remarkable, actually. Well done to the Corvette on that lap time. Now comes to the tricky bit. Out of these two, which one would I have is a really, really tough question. And despite all of my thinking while editing and driving for various bits of this, I really genuinely can't decide. It is a really tough choice trying to pick between these two cars. I love the LFA's engine. It's a fantastic engine, and I love the immediateness of everything that goes on with the LFA. But I also like the SLR. I like the almost subtle speed at times of the Mercedes, and how it really can catch you out with just how quick the car is. It's a very tough choice. I think if money was no object, I would probably go for the LFA, but it's only by a very small margin, by about the same margin that it was quicker around the Top Gear track. It's a very tough decision on that one. For the money, it's very hard to justify the LFA over lots and lots of other cars that are both quicker and a lot cheaper. But the LFA certainly does have a character of its own, and it is good fun to drive. The SLR is also exciting to drive in a very different way. Yeah, I think I would probably choose the LFA, but I would miss the SLR in that comparison. Yeah, it's a particularly difficult decision. So let me know in the comments, guys, which one you would have. I'd be interested to see the results of that one. Anyway, that is it for this video. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.